Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Well, howdy, hey, good morning, and how are you, my friends? Welcome to the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator, and around the world at michaeldukeshow.com on the internet. It's gonna be a good week. It's going to be a good week. I am rested, recharged, rejuvenated. I had a fantastic weekend. Was down in Homer over the weekend and got a chance to see some of my favorite people and do some of my favorite things and eat some of my favorite food, and just it was amazing. It was amazing. It was fantastic. But now we're back. We're back to the grind. Oh man. We're back to the grind. We're ready to go. Yeah, it looks like, is it me or fall is in the air? Holy cow. It is, man, little snow in Fairbanks, and Kenneth up in Fairbanks just said it snowed a little bit just now at work. Just it was a cold and rainy. I drove back up from Homer on Sunday, and it was like monsoon torrential rains all the way down. It's been cold and wet. How can fall be? It's only the first week in August. How could fall be here so quickly? I mean, I'm not going to complain, but man, come on. I need a little bit of Indian summer. Can you hook a brother up? Please hook a brother up and give him a little bit more summer before we get back up into that cold winter time. Can we do that, please? I'm asking for a friend. All right. Well, welcome back to the program. I guarantee you I'm going to be all messed up this week because today's Tuesday and, it feels like Monday. So it's, one of those things, but we are going to dive into this and, be ready to go. Let's get some stuff going on, shall we? On the program today, we are going to be talking with, Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. He is going to be joining me, and we're going to talk about the weekly top three. The top three things today include a look at the candidates and what all of these questions and answers and these interviews have done for them. There's a bunch of interviews out there in the various newspapers and news outlets and everything else, and it will give us a little bit of an idea of what of where they stand on certain things. And so that's going to be the first thing. The second item is going to be, just more proof positive that, Governor Dunleavy just is really not that serious about holding the line in spending, and why the fourth place in the governor's race matters is actually number 2, and then the third one is Dunleavy. So I don't want to get them out of order, but there you go. 3 big things with Brad Keithley for Alaskans for sustainable budgets. So that's going to be fun. It's going to be good. It's going to be enjoyable. Then in hour 2, we're going to get a chance to sit down and talk with Chris Story, the man from Homer, who's going to come in and give us our weekly life coaching lesson, positivity boost, or PMA uplift, however you want to call it, whatever it is. He's going to be joining us and talking with us this morning about something uplifting. And I don't know, maybe we can talk him into talking about some politics too. It's I don't know. We'll see what happens. Speaking of politics, can I tell you how much I enjoyed not reading about all the political madness that's going on going on. I mean, oh man, I guess Trump's house gets raided by the FBI. There's a hue and cry about it. I don't know exactly what happened. I read a little bit about it, but it's, it was just one of those things. And then, but I will say there was one story that I read this weekend. And I was looking over we were waiting to have breakfast over at Duncan's Diner in Homer. And my wife was scrolling through her phone, and I was just sitting there, people watching. And I look down, and I see the headline, and it said, "With less than 2 weeks to go on Alaska's U.S. House race, Palin went to the lower 48." And I was like, "What? No, come on, that's just hyperbole. That wouldn't happen. I mean, we got 2 weeks to go, and this is where the rubber meets the road, and she wouldn't possibly." So I pulled out my phone, against my better judgment. I logged into the story, and I was like, what? No, it's true. She was in Minneapolis when everybody else is. She was speaking at CPAC, so okay, it's a big deal. But at the same time, you're 2 weeks from the. I mean, what? Anyway, so that was the only story that I read the whole time that I was on vacation. And you know what? It was perfect. Blissful. What was that? That's that line from the Matrix as the guy chews the big fat piece of steak. And he says, "I've decided ignorance is bliss." That's kind of where I was at this weekend. I just wanted to be ignorant for a little bit. Just leave all that craziness behind me, and away we go. All right. Well, a couple of the big headlines. Obviously, that was a big one. The raid at Mar-a-Lago is another thing, which I personally, I'm not going to really get into, but I see that it's there. So I do acknowledge as a headline for those of you who are reading that on the outside. A good piece of news for those people who have been searching for justice for David Grunwald, Edie Grunwald's 16-year-old son who was murdered in 2016. Eric Almendinger, who is the first of the 4 teenagers who were charged, was sentenced yesterday to 99 years in prison. The 4 teenagers who are all now young adults. I mean, this took place. I mean, can you believe it was 8 years ago? 8 years ago, 2016 was the murder. His first sentencing hearing, Almendinger's first sentencing hearing was in 2019. The wheels of justice roll excruciatingly slowly. It has been 3 years since his first sentencing hearing, March of 2019. But he has now been sentenced to serve 99 years. He claimed full responsibility for the killing and apologized to the family. But by that time, Ben and Edie had already left the courtroom. And he is going to go to the big house with many doors for many, many, many years. 2 others have already been sentenced. Johnson has been sentenced to 99 years, and Barrett, who reached a plea agreement to serve 45 years. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. So At least 3 of the 4 are done, and we got one more to go. And that should be, I think that should be the end. I believe all of them: Dominic Johnson, Bradley Renfro, Austin Barrett. So we're waiting on Renfro to be sentenced. I think is the last one in there. But good news for the Grunwald family: at least one more is on the way. I can't imagine. I just can't imagine reopening this wound over and over and over again. And the length of time that it's taken has just been, I mean, it's been 5 years since they were all arrested. It was 6 years since the murder, 5 years since they were all picked up and incarcerated, and just absolutely insane. But there we go. Good news and justice in the long run for David in that respect. So good news on that front. There was an interesting article in the ADN yesterday talking about Alaska's childcare and how childcare is in crisis, and but the market conditions are perfect for small entrepreneurs who want to start their own business. And this whole article, and we're not going to have enough time to get into it now. I'm just looking up at the clock right now. We're not going to have enough time to get into it now. But it is interesting to read a couple things about this. The fact that it's going to chronicle the story of 3 workers who were childcare workers who worked in small schools or preschool programs, and how they left their big jobs during or midterm COVID or just after COVID started, and all began their own businesses in dealing with smaller, either pod learning or Montessori style in-home childcare and everything else. And it's something that I realized reading halfway through the story. I realized that I never really had to deal with, because my wife was a stay-at-home mom, and we never had to deal with the childcare issue. And I want to talk a little bit about that. And I'm sure I'm not going to be popular with everybody, but I gave up on that a long time ago. Anyway, it'll be interesting to discuss. And maybe when we get into hour 2, we'll have time to kind of break that down a little bit and talk about that. But meanwhile, you know what? We should just go take the break. That's really what's going on. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll be diving into it. We'll be talking with Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The Michael Duke Show continues. Your home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, good morning, Jarrett. Good to meet you as well this weekend. It was fun stuff. Let's see. Jeremy, yeah, I'm sorry I missed you on the peninsula, Jeremy. All right. Stedman, Walker, Dunleavy, Walker, and Stedman seen yesterday at the landing in K-Town breakfast. Okay. Good morning. I'm looking. Yeah, and she missed the Willow candidate meet and greet on Saturday. Taking my chances with Nick. I don't want to deal with a woman that's afraid to talk to Alaskans. Blah, blah, blah. I don't think it makes a difference where the candidate is at, says Willie. Every single person I know has already made up their mind on the congressional seats. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Brad Keithley is probably listening right now. And Brad, I'm not sure. Do you want to try the new thing, or do you want to should we just do Zoom? I mean, we know Zoom works. So I guess we could, I guess we should do that. because, we know it works. And I didn't talk to you about it ahead of time. So it's okay. It's okay. I was going to, I got the new software. I'm feeling pretty good about it. You see all the video guests I had last week? Mayor Charlie Pierce and the thing and all that. That was amazing. Come on. Well, I think Zoom works. It's trying to work right now. All right. The host will let you in soon. Look at that. The host is, oh my God, he's going to blow my ears out. I forgot to turn down the volume. Come on. Log in. There we go. Oh, let me turn this down. Ugh. All right.
Turn down the volume.
Okay. I think we got it turned down. I think we're ready to go. Hello, Brad.
You got this whole conversation going with me, and I'm trying to answer you.
You're trying to answer me and realize you're not connected. I'm just having a conversation with you. Yeah.
And I wasn't being responsive, was I?
Yeah, no, you weren't being, well, I wasn't expecting you to be responsive. That was really more of a monologue directed at you. So it's all good. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing great, and it sounds like you're in really great shape also.
Man, you know what? It was so good to just get away from everything for a little bit. I didn't get to spend as much what I like to call beach watching time as I normally do, which is where I just sit in a chair and watch the beach and let my mind float free for, and think deep thoughts. I didn't get as much of that as I normally do, but it was still pretty fantastic. It was definitely not a bad weekend. How about yourself?
It was great. I'm in Illinois, helping my mother out a little bit, and the weather here cooperated, and so it's great. So nice day here today, and so I'm out on the porch and enjoying the weather.
All right, fantastic. All right, well, we are going to be jumping into this here in just a hot second. So I will I'll come back to you. Don't go anywhere, Brad Keithley. Our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. That's how we do right here. All right, my friends. What else we got here? Daycare next door. Good morning. I think candidate decisions matter regardless if voters made up their mind or not. The decisions are important. What decisions they will make in office. This is a glimpse. Brad is on YouTube this morning. Kipnook is in lockdown today and homeschooling. Power came back on last night, says Barbara. Brad has an echo, says Chris. Anybody else hear Brad having an echo? He sounded a little hollow in the very beginning, but I don't think it's going to take. Kevin McCabe, Native Health is busy pounding the drums over COVID again. It's election season. All right. We'll be finally visiting Homer the first time August 20th, says Kenneth. Kenneth, you're going to love it. You are going to love it. It is amazing. I recommend you stay at the Ocean Shores Resort. It's perfect. Damn, that blew my ears out. All right, you guys ready to go? Let's jump back into it here. The Michael Duke Show continues. Brad Keithley is our guest. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like the show, share the show. Obey. Do what I say. Subscribe. Ring the bell. Okay, well, I may be a little bit excitable when I come back, but he's like, you're so chipper. Sorry, it's good to be back with you guys, and I'm feeling kind of rejuvenated and refreshed. I got a book full of stuff that I wrote down and ideas and concepts, and I'm working on it. I felt like Nikola Tesla for a minute. It was crazy. I had just ideas popping in everywhere. All right. Let's kick things off though here, shall we, for this morning? It is Tuesday, the weekly deep dive, the weekly top three, and Brad Keithley join us to discuss all things state and all the deep stuff. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Michael, I'm doing great this morning, and it sounds like you're in just, your energy level is up.
It's the first time I hadn't really taken much of a vacation this whole year. Not poor pitiful me, but I just go, and I realized as I was making that long drive down to Homer, my gosh, I needed to just turn my brain off for a while because, oof, you just need that little recharge sometimes to get it done. And I feel great. I feel good. And yeah, I'm ready to be worn down again. So it's all good.
Ready to be worn down again. Well, Homer's a great place to recharge.
Oh man, it sure is. Absolutely. All right. Well, Brad, let's kick things off and get stuff started here this morning. We got the weekly top three. Number one is all the things that we have learned from the state candidate interviews, and there's a bunch of stuff going on. There's a bunch of interviews that have been floating around. ADN has got some, the Beacon, some of the other ones. So tell us a little bit about what you've learned from the state candidate interviews for governor, for senator, blah, 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 the whole thing. Let's just give me some rundown here.
Well, the Beacon has got interviews with governor candidates, the gubernatorial candidates, state Senate candidates, and state House candidates that responded. The ADN's got interviews with the gubernatorial candidates that responded. And those have both been interesting reading. I think the overall assessment that I came away from reading it is disappointment. There doesn't seem to be a consensus around, it's not surprising disappointment, I guess, but disappointment. There doesn't seem to be a consensus around any sort of approach on fiscal policy. It's still, we still seem to be in the stage 6 years later, 6 years after PFDs were first cut, and we still seem to be in the cycle of my way. I'm going to win with my way, and I'm not going to compromise 1 inch. And so you really don't see a consensus. What I was hoping for, what I was looking for, was a consensus around the issue, and being able to identify candidates that if put together in the legislature would be able to bring forth a policy. Most disappointing, I think, was the limited mention of the fiscal policy working group and the recommendations made by the fiscal policy working group. 2 Senate candidates who responded to the questionnaires, Rob Myers and Jesse Keel, endorsed the fiscal policy working group. It's not surprising for Jesse; he was on it. Rob's endorsement, I think, is a great sign, and I was really encouraged by that. And since I read his early on, I was sort of hoping it was going to start a trend, but it didn't. A few more House candidates endorsed the fiscal policy working group, but mostly they were Democrats or independents. Dan Ortiz endorsed it. Others endorsed it as you went through, but there was very little recognition even of the work of the fiscal policy working group, much less endorsement of the recommendations. The rest of it was, as you would sort of expect, some who said we're going to cut government spending down to match revenues. Some, Andy Josephson was the worst in this crowd. Andy Josephson, who said, the PFD's whatever we say it is, and it's whatever's left over after we fund government.
Wow.
He was very blatant in that regard.
Just throw it right out there. I don't want your vote. I mean, it's fine. Go ahead. That'll work.
Well, it was clearly an appeal to those who are tied to the government sector of the economy. Some candidates recognized the what I call the who pays issue, who bears the burden of fiscal policy if we fund government through PFD cuts. Some candidates recognized that it was a regressive tax on middle and lower income Alaska families, but very few of them sort of went on and said, "And we got to come to some solution. The solution should be the fiscal policy working group." So it was a lot of, that's a problem. We really got to deal with it. Here's where I think we ought to land: either spending cuts or just Andy Josephson's all the way from spending cuts all the way to Andy Josephson's whatever's left over. One candidate said It could even go to zero, and that candidate would be fine with that. So it was a disappointing mashup on that issue. I would say that there was a lot more enthusiasm among the various candidates for spending, various spending priorities, both Democrats and Republicans. The Democrats tended to say we've got to fund government employees. We've got to develop pensions for them. We've got to make sure that their pay is competitive. That's a solution that we need to come to. Some talked about education in particular, better funding education, building up education both at the K through 12 level as well as the university level. Not unsurprisingly, the candidates up in Adam Wool's old district in Fairbanks, which represents UAF, were all about we have to fully fund UAF. We have to make sure that UAF's taken care of. Weren't those cuts that Governor Dunleavy proposed horrible?
Right.
We have to balance those out. A lot of discussion on the Democrat side about pensions and about employees and about education funding. On the Republican side, there was a lot of discussion about infrastructure funding, and we need to fund infrastructure. Some candidates were very clear that there were no taxes, even if it meant PFD cuts. Dan Sadler, surprisingly, said we need to take care of the PFD, but not if it means taxes.
Right.
And so put himself in that camp of cutting revenues to middle or taking revenues from middle and lower income Alaska families and not spreading it more equitably. But in general, Michael, I would say that you don't read these interviews and come away with the feeling that okay, we're on our way to a solution. We've got a consensus building around certain proposals, and we're gonna and this crop of legislators are going to advance us toward that. Same thing's true in the governor's race. I mean, Governor Dunleavy said we're gonna propose 50-50 out on the as a constitutional amendment. If I can get it through the legislature, we're going to propose 50-50. That's my solution. Les Guerra said we're going to tax the oil companies. Louis Flora down at Homer said the same thing. We're going to tax the oil companies. That's the way we're going to resolve our fiscal issues. And Walker, for good, bad, or indifferent, is stay in the course. Walker said we're going to build the permanent fund through PFD cuts. And at some point, we're going to get out there to nirvana, where we can just fund government entirely off the earnings from the permanent fund, the earnings off the permanent fund.
Yeah,
well,
I mean that is the ultimate wet dream of a lot of these politicians who are so pro government. They just can't wait till the day that the fund hits $100 billion plus and just spins off $5 or $6 billion a year. They just can't wait for that day.
Yeah, it used to be $100 billion was going to be nirvana, and now Walker's interview, he mentions $120 billion. So that number keeps growing bigger in order to fund more government. But you know what that means? It means that you have to cut the PFD now. His proposal is to cut the PFD now to a sustainable, affordable level. We have to cut the PFD now, and once you get out to this nirvana, you still have to cut the PFD, because you're taking all of the earnings off of the permanent fund to fund government. I mean, that's their goal, to get the permanent fund to a level where they can fund government off of it, and the PFD is an afterthought in that process. So it's the gubernatorial candidates really aren't coming to grips with it. I was hoping that one of the gubernatorial candidates would step up and say, fiscal policy working group, we're going to build around that. We have a solution out there. It's still somewhat nebulous, but we're going to build around that. None of them did that. None of them even mentioned it. So I think I think in large part the interviews reflected where we've been, and lead one with the impression that we're just going to continue to muddle along, which means continue PFD cuts. We're going to continue to muddle along, even with this crop, even looking at this crop coming into the legislature after this election.
Well, it's interesting, again, the roadmap, and we keep coming back to this, and I don't mean to be a broken record, but we keep coming back to the fiscal policy working group. I mean, you got somebody like Rob Meyer, who I would consider to be one of the most conservative members of the Senate, and Jesse Keel both saying, here's a roadmap. Jesse Keel being on the opposite side of the political spectrum. Here's a roadmap that we can work with. We've heard other people, Kevin McCabe and Mike Shower and others, mention this and say, here is something that we can use as a blueprint. And the fact that not everybody is pulling it just shocks me that this is just laying there. It proves to me that in a lot of ways there are many people out there that don't really want to fix this problem. They don't see it as a problem. The problem for them is, how do we get rid of the PFD and use it for government spending without angering the electorate?
Yeah, it's more than that, because you're seeing it on both the left and right. It's not just how do we continue to use it for government spending, or in Walker's case, how do we cut it now, cut it later, and have this nirvana of government funded off the permanent fund. It's more than that. Even on the right, you're seeing people stick to we're going to cut government spending down to whatever it takes to fully fund the PFD, and that's we saw that in 2019. That's just not going to happen. So it's this absence on both the left and the right. I mean, maybe what we're seeing is we've got a core group that is endorsing the fiscal policy working group. We've got a core group that really, views this as a multifaceted issue that needs to be addressed in a number of different ways. And they're going to continue to, and they're committed to continuing to work down that road. And maybe what they do is, once the legislature starts, is they pull in people from the two sides toward that middle and coalesce around it. Maybe that's where this works. So as long as you have a core group believing in the fiscal policy working group, or the proposal there, maybe that's really something that you should just accept as a win and go on. But none of the governor candidates, I mean, not Dunleavy, not Walker, not Les, mentioned it at all.
Did Charlie Pierce mention it at all? I'm just curious.
Charlie Pierce didn't respond.
Didn't respond to the interview. Okay, all right, I see. Okay.
So I don't, and Kirka just said we're going to cut our way there. So I was hoping for a bigger recognition that we'd made progress with the fiscal policy working group, and in some candidates we see that, both left and right. You can't get much more left than Jesse Keel in the Senate. You can't get much more right than Rob Myers in the Senate. And to see those two working, both recognizing that the fiscal policy working group had a recommendation out there, that's encouraging. You see, but you don't see that same sort of left and right in the House. As I say, the ones who mentioned the fiscal policy working group were largely Democrats or independents. Very few Republicans responded, but the Republicans that did respond, I can't recall any of those mentioning the fiscal policy working group as a way forward. So it's for somebody who was hoping to see a fuller recognition, a more broad recognition of the efforts of the fiscal policy working group, and sort of their recognition that it's a multifaceted multifaceted problem that needs to be addressed. The interviews were disappointing.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We are working towards our number 2, which hopefully we're going to have time for all 3 today. But number 2 is going to be why the 4th place in the governor's race matters under ranked choice voting. Give me a 60-second thumbnail here, Brad.
Well, we talked about this last week during one of the breaks, and I thought it was important enough to go back and hit it again in the discussion during airtime to talk about why I think at least the 4th place matters, and why it matters a lot in the outcome of this election. And so we're going to talk about it again once we come back on air.
All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're going to continue here in just a moment with him. Don't go anywhere. Don't forget, you can find us out on Facebook if you would like to sound off with us and hang out, ask questions. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. Brad Keithley continues with us in just a moment. It is your home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio, The Michael Duke Show.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're back with Brad in the break here. Getting ready to take some questions from the chat room and talk about stuff and things. Let me see if there's been any questions for you. Here's Chris says in Twitch, he says, no progress on the working group plan. That is fake news. None of the shot callers supported it. If they did, they would have acted on it already. And I don't know if it's fake news, but it is. I mean, it is. You're not wrong. The shot callers, meaning the leadership of the legislature, did not support it. And so it really didn't go anywhere, even though it seems to be the consensus of both sides of the aisle, Brad.
Well, the reason the fiscal policy working group is important is because it did have buy-in from both the left side of the legislature and the right side of the legislature, as well as some who could be said to be in the center. So it was a consensus formed out of trying to find a way to mesh all of these positions together. Yeah, leadership didn't like it, but we're having an election, and we have elections to try to to form new leadership or to form new directions for the legislature and for the governor's office. That's why we have elections. So the hope is that in the election process, we elect more people who want to drive toward a consensus and build a consensus around the fiscal policy working group. Look, we need to face up to something. If we don't have a consensus on the way forward, the legislature is going to continue PFD cuts. Status quo means continued and deeper as oil prices come down and oil revenues come down. Status quo is going to mean continued PFD cuts. We need to find an alternative direction. If you believe, as I do at least, that the PFD cuts are the worst approach that you possibly can take. So fiscal policy working group, it didn't have the buy-in of leadership, but we're having an election. The election is to hopefully find new directions and looking for people who are buying into the fiscal policy working group. One could hope that in the next legislature, once the Senate is reformed and once the House is reformed, that at least on the Senate side, maybe Jesse Keel and Rob Myers are in their respective parties' leaderships, and they have indicated a recognition that the fiscal policy working group is a good way forward. So the fact it didn't happen in the last legislature, that's old news.
Right.
The question is what happens going forward.
Right. I mean, now that all the work is done, you don't want to have to create another, fiscal policy. You've already done it. I mean, just acknowledge the plan that's there and discuss the merits of that one before you move on anywhere else. I see Michael on Facebook has said something which I am seeing more and more discussed by many of the more progressive candidates, which is one of the candidates on the peninsula is saying he's going to get the defined benefits retirement plan reinstated. That, again, is another goalpost dream for many of these progressives. They just can't wait to get that. I mean, I don't know if they just can't do basic math and understood, how far underwater we were with the defined benefits retirement plan before the tier 1 plan. But I mean, this is dangerous talk, in my opinion.
Oh, we're still underwater. we're still underwater. We're only 70 or 80% funded,
Right.
Even after the stock market run up of the past few years. We're only 78 or 80% funded on our retirement. People say, well, we're going to set up this defined benefits differently. We're going to set it up to pay for itself. We're not going to have the kind of exposure. We got somebody mowing a yard back here. We're not going to have the kind of exposure that financial exposure that we've had in the past, and we're going to set it up so it pays for itself. But that never happens, right?
Right.
I mean, you get 2 or 3. That's your intent at the beginning, but you get 2 or 3 years or 4 years down the road, and all of a sudden, we don't want to pay that much for defined benefits. We don't want to contribute that much to defined benefits, and then the stock market starts getting a little wavery. And the difference between defined benefits and defined contribution is who takes the risk. In defined benefits, the state takes the risk. In defined contribution, the contributors take the risk of the market wavering. And you get 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road, or 5 or 10 years down the road, the market wavers a little bit. It wavers from the expectations you had at the time you set the rates. So you get pushback on the rates, and the market doesn't fulfill your expectations, and all of a sudden the state's on the hook. The state who's taking the risk in defined benefit programs on the hook.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We are coming up on the return to radio. Somebody asked if there was a show from yesterday. I couldn't find it on YouTube. No, I was off yesterday. So today's the first day of the week, and that's where it is. Brad is in Illinois. He said earlier on he's hanging out with his mom in Illinois. All right. We're going to jump back into this. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. All right, we're continuing now. Brad Keithley, our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. It's the weekly top 3. Why the 4th place in the governor's race actually matters. Everybody's talking about Dunleavy and Walker and Guerra, but the 4th position is going to be important as well. Brad, we did talk about this a little bit last week. Give us your take on this as we go forward here.
Well, in ranked choice voting, I think the 4th place has the potential to determine the outcome of the election. And the second choice votes for the 4th place candidate once we get to ranked choice voting. And I think it's very important who that 4th ranked candidate is and what his voters are likely to do, what that person's voters are likely to do with their second choice ballots. I say that because as we saw with the Ivan Moore poll, and as we've seen with additional polls since, Walker or Dunleavy is ahead in November. Guerra and Walker are close. So you take the fourth close to each other. You take the 4th ranked candidate. You throw you eliminate his votes, his first choice votes. When you get to ranked choice voting, you take his that candidate's second choice votes, and then you reapply them. In the Ivan Moore poll, that was enough to push Dunleavy rather over the top, over 50%. And I think that's probably how it's going to play out in November, if enough people are ranking Dunleavy in second as the second choice on their ballots. Here's where I think it's important. I don't think when you look at Pierce and Kirka, who are the 2 leading contenders for 4th place, I think the Pierce voters, people who would vote for Charlie Pierce, are a lot more likely to rank Dunleavy second than not, and set up that situation when we get to November and we get to ranked choice voting, where those second choice ballots from the 4th ranked candidate end up pushing Dunleavy over. We can hope that Charlie does even better than that as the election gets on, as the focus turns to those 4 candidates as opposed to being spread among a number of candidates. But I think it's important that 4th choice candidate, or that 4th ballot candidate be be Charlie. Kirka, on the other hand, I think his voters are a lot more likely to be what's being called bullet voters. And bullet voters are voters that vote for one candidate and then stop marking their ballot.
One and done, right?
One and done. And if you have that, if the fourth ranked candidate, if the fourth candidate in the ranked choice voting in November, if you have a lot of bullet voters for that fourth choice candidate, their second choices may not be enough. The few who are the ones who market second choice may not be enough to push Dunleavy or whoever, hopefully a conservative candidate over the top. So I think it's really critical who's in that fourth spot. Will it be a candidate who's attracting voters who are going to mark who are going to mark a second choice, or will it be a candidate who's going to attract voters who are bullet voters and not mark that second choice? I think that's critical enough, frankly, that I think some people who otherwise might be inclined to vote for Dunleavy on the first ballot can reconsider and consider voting for Charlie in the primary to put him in a position to be that fourth ranked candidate. I certainly intend to vote for Charlie in the primary.
Right.
For that reason, among others. I like his positions generally as well. But I think it's important that people consider when they go into the ballot, since you only get one vote in the August primary, when you go in to vote, that you consider voting not only for the candidate that you favor, but consider putting a candidate, how your vote would impact putting a candidate in that fourth place position.
And somebody just said I was going to rank Kirka, Pierce, and then Dunleavy. The problem is, again, assuming that the three of them are in the ranked choice portion. And that's the problem, is that there's, with all the oxygen being in the room sucked up by Dunleavy and Guerra and Walker, that fourth position, there's only going to be four. So it's either going to be, I think at this point, it's going to be Kirka or Pierce. And you're right. I think the Kirka voters are all so done with Mike Dunleavy that they're not even going to bother to vote at that point for anybody else. We need to make sure that I said, I'm going to rank the red and the yellow. I'm going to rank the Republican candidates and Libertarian candidates, even if I have to write them in. I'm not placing a vote for Walker or Guerra or for any other Democrat in the race thus far. And that's just how it's got to be. But you can't just be a one vote ticket.
Yeah, and Michael, keep in mind that the whole ranked choice is in November. The primary, the August primary, in the governor's race is one vote. You get one vote, and the question is how you want to use that one vote. And to me, the question is, do you want to vote just for the candidate you favor most, the candidate you think is going to finish first, or do you want to think more strategically and use that vote to help position somebody in the fourth position that's going to be hugely important when we get to November.
Right.
So I understand people who say, well, I'm going to rank so and so and so and so and so and so. We're not there yet. Don't worry about that yet. Don't think about that yet.
Right.
Think about August, and you only get one vote. And how do you want to use that vote to protect yourself in what you want to do once you get to November?
I agree. I think that's important. It's one of the reasons why it's one of the reasons why I'm voting Charlie Pierce in August, just to simply, one, because I like his policies and I'd like to see him be governor. And two, he's the best of the remaining candidates to be in the top four to make sure that there is at least a Republican governor, if nothing else, when it's all said and done. Brad, that leaves us to number 3 today, which of course is just more proof that Dunleavy is not really about the minimal small budget after all. You've got more proof yet laid out again. Well,
we saw in 2019 that Governor Dunleavy did try to cut spending. He came out with a budget that I think a lot of people who listen to this program supported, and he pushed the type of cuts that people have talked about, but it didn't succeed. And in the end, it didn't even get 16 legislators who were willing to back him up. Had he made the vetoes down to the levels that he originally proposed, he didn't have 16 legislators who would back him up on that level of cuts. So we've tried that. It didn't work. And what's happened since is, I think Dunleavy just sort of threw in the towel and said, okay, well, that's not going to go anyplace, and it's going to get recall petitions filed against me, and it's probably going to lose me the election. And so he sort of wandered over to the other side, not all the way over to the other side. He's not, full-throated, let's do defined benefits, let's increase K-12 spending, let's, fully fund the universities, let's do this and that spending. He's not all the way over there, but he sort of wandered into the middle ground of, yeah, okay, I'm not going to fight spending all that much. The latest evidence of that, I think, was him allowing a bill that raised the salaries of essentially the lawyers in government, the attorney general, the lawyers in the attorney general's office, the lawyers that work for the court system, turns out legislative staffers as well, raised those salaries. He allowed that bill. It's about a $35 million, $40 million price tag on those increases. He allowed that bill to become law without signing it. A bill can become law one of two ways. It can either become law with the governor signing it, or it can become law after the passage of a certain amount of time with the governor not signing it, not vetoing it, and even though he doesn't sign it, it nevertheless becomes law. And this past week, the governor allowed that bill to become law. He didn't give any publicity to it. He didn't have a signing ceremony, but he also didn't say, look, sometimes we have to fund government. He didn't use it as an opportunity to say, sometimes we have to fund government, but we don't have to fund government always, and use it as an opportunity to resend sort of his spending cut message. He didn't use it for that either.
In fact, they said something like, well, something like this doesn't really need a signing ceremony or something. It was just like, really? That was it didn't really need a signing ceremony, so you're just going to let it go? I mean,
so those people who continue to say we're going to cut spending. I mean, my point ultimately on this is people who continue to say we're going to cut spending down to, the level that we have traditional revenues to cover, and we're not going to have a need for PFD cuts because we're going to cut spending down to the levels where we can afford full PFDs. That's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen on Dunleavy's watch, and Dunleavy certainly is the leading candidate. Certainly, it's not going to happen on Walker's watch. Yeah. It's not going to happen on Guerra's watch.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're up against it. Thank you so much, Brad. Hold the line, folks. We're out of time. Hour 2, dead ahead. Sorry, Brad, we ran a little bit long. I didn't mean to interject there too much, but I just had to laugh at the way that they put that in there. Like, oh, so he couldn't be bothered to cut it because, well, but he didn't really need a signing ceremony. So, I mean, again, like you said, he's completely rolled over and wet on himself at this point. It seems like that's just, throwing his hand up in the air and says, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just don't unelect me.
Well, that's exactly right. I wouldn't go so far as that analogy, but for example, what he did earlier after the legislature finished with the budget, he did veto some bonuses that the legislature had passed and included in the appropriations bill to these same people that are now getting the subsequent legislation that this legislation gave raises to. So he did say, I'm not going to double dip. I'm not going to give them bonuses and agree to this increased spending. I'm going to agree to the increased spending and veto the bonuses. So he gets some credit for that, but it's not the Dunleavy that we thought we had in 2018. It's not the Dunleavy he's going to come in with a red pen and rip the budget apart in order to get spending down to levels that accommodate the PFD without other types of revenue. And people who keep saying that, people who keep digging in their heels and say, well, I'm not going to agree to anything, until we get spending down to those levels. All they're doing, I mean, Dunleavy's not going to do that. All that attitude is doing is prolonging PFD cuts, because the legislature is not going to do anything else without a consensus to move forward like we have with the Fiscal Policy Working Group. The legislature is not going to do anything other than PFD cuts. And all we're doing is, taking that attitude of we got to cut spending first, or I'm going to hold my breath until we cut spending. All that attitude is doing is prolonging PFD cuts. And this latest episode with Dunleavy, this latest episode by the governor, where he just allowed these pay raises to go into effect, is another example of that.
Yeah. I I like this. Someone just said in the chat room, going back to your number 2, talking about the fourth candidate in the ranked choice. Rick says, strange, didn't we used to only get one vote? So if I vote for one candidate and they don't make it, so why should I put someone in second place when I don't want them in office? The whole thing is a setup for disaster. Well, look, it's the law of the land now. And you have to think of it like this is immediate runoff. This is like an immediate runoff race is what you have to kind of consider it in that regard. And would you rather be able to vote for 2 candidates, one that you like and one that you kind of like, or again, the lesser of 2 evils, and be able to do it all at once? I mean, I think if you're voting for just one candidate and you're missing an opportunity here to, again, at least keep some semblance of conservatism in the state government at this point, Brad.
Well, if you're voting for Dunleavy, I mean, taking the polls and assuming that's sort of where we're headed to in November, if you're voting for Dunleavy, you probably can do one and done, because he's probably not going to be the fourth candidate. He's probably not going to be the one where second choice votes matter. But if you're voting for Kirka or Charlie, if we come to November and one of them are the fourth candidate coming out of the primary, and you don't do a second vote for them, essentially you're voting for Walker and Guerra. Because if Dunleavy doesn't make it to 50% after the fourth, if he doesn't make it to 50% in the first round, and he doesn't make it to 50% after the second round, then you're going to have Guerra or Walker's votes, most of whom are going to vote for the other as their second choice. You're going to have those votes determining the outcome, and it's likely going to push one of them over the top. So, yeah, one and done is probably fine if you're voting for Dunleavy, but one and done if the fourth candidate is Pierce or Kirka, and you vote one and done, you're essentially voting for Guerra or Walker in what would subsequently be the third round.
Right. And that's the thing, is when it gets down into the third round, that's when things really get dicey, because again, by that point, especially if you've got 2 candidates that are close to each other, like Guerra and Walker, those votes essentially combine at some point. And that's a problem when it's all said and done. If Walker or Guerra get elected, they will punish the Republican donor class. I think they'll just punish the state in general. I don't think it'll be specifically the donor class. I think they want to court the donor class, but I think it'll just be the state in general.
Oh no, the Republican donor class is over supporting Walker. Look at Jim Jansen. Look at Kathy Giesel. Look at the Republicans, the big money look at Ron Duncan. Look at the big money Republicans. They're over supporting Walker. Why? Because Walker is going to use PFD cuts to finance government. He's going to have big government, but do it on the back of middle and lower income Alaska families. He's not going to tax the top 20%. They're there. They're already there. Guerra, significantly less so. But that donor class, that establishment donor class, is already behind Walker. He isn't going to punish them at all.
Right.
In fact, he's setting up his policies to work for them.
Right. Frustrating stuff. Brad, what are you watching for this week, real quick here?
Well, we're in the final week before the primary. I'll be watching stuff that comes out of that. Any additional candidate interviews, I'll be digging into, looking at the last minute policies and then last minute policy approaches. And then I've got to make up my mind about the House race. I mean, who to vote for in the House race. That's a crazy mix that we've got going in there, and I'm not clear in my mind who I'm going to vote for in that. So I'll be focused on that.
All right. Well, Brad, we look forward to it next week. Enjoy your time and down there in sunny USA down there. Thanks for coming on board, and appreciate it. And as always, look forward to talking to you again next week.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we are out of time. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the interwebs and around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. It is the Michael Duke Show, broadcasting live right now. Thank you so much for coming on and joining us this hour of the program, being brought to you by our friends over there at Satellite West. When it comes to communications, be it satellite, cellular, VHF, whatever it is, the folks at Satellite West can get you hooked up. Again, aviation, marine, wherever you are. Check them out at satellitewest.com. Thank you for coming on board. And welcome back to those of you who are just joining us. Hour 2 of the big radio show. And I got to say, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm back. I'm back from another great weekend. It was a nice, long, I was going to say 4, but it was actually a 5-day weekend. And it was amazing. It was amazing. I went down to Homer and spent another beautiful few days down there in God's country. Stayed at the beautiful Ocean Shores Resort down there, right on the right. Got my favorite room. They should just put my name on that room. I have stayed at that room for the last 3 years. Specifically, we've stayed in that room. Right there on the grass, right over the beach, just absolutely beautiful. And it was an amazing trip. My first trip of the year to Homer. Normally I'm in Homer by this time. The last couple of years I've been in Homer 3 or 4 times already, but this is my first trip down this year. And I already want to go back. I already want to go back down and just enjoy and hang out and do some it's something about it. Something about the sea air at the little cosmic hamlet by the sea. It's just it's beautiful, and I'm ready to go back. I'm ready to go back right now. That's where it's at. But here we are, working away, getting things ready to go. I feel recharged, and we're going to continue here in hour 2. We just finished up with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, and we are going to be visiting again with him next week. But if you missed it, you can go back and listen to it on the podcast, or you can watch the replay on YouTube and Facebook. We've got those up and available for you to take a look at and be a part of. I want to remind you that if you like the show and you want to help support the show financially, you can become a member of our fan club, the Cool Kids Club. We call it the Common Sense Corps. And you get access to the private Facebook group. You can get coffee and we get discounts on swag. We just did a big swag sale for folks, T-shirts and mugs and stuff like that. And Common Sense Corps members got a discount on that. They got it at rock bottom prices. And so you can check all that out. Again, go over to michaeldukeshow.com and click on Join the Corps. And you can become a member of the Common Sense Corps for as little as a cup of coffee a month. You can help support the show And they even have one-time contributions now where you can do one and done and be a member for a year for a just super cheap price. Anyway, go over and check it out. MichaelDukeShow.com. Click on Join the Core to become a member of our Patreon club, the Common Sense Core. I like it. All right, let's do that. Hour 2 here this morning. We're going to be talking with Chris Story, the man from Homer, who's going to call in and give us our weekly positivity update. Meanwhile, you know what? Let's I haven't talked to you guys in a while, so let's open up the phone lines and see what you guys have to say. Let's open up the phone lines and we'll talk with you guys and see what is on your mind at 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say this morning on any of the topics that we've touched on, and we can hear what you guys have to say this morning. I still have this story that I do want to talk about here eventually, which is about the childcare sector and the education sector that was up in the ADN. But I think that may need its whole it may need a whole segment all to itself. I read it this morning, and I may want to dissect it a little bit here before I get too far along in that. So we may put that one off for just a little bit. But since we got Chris Story coming up, let's just take some calls and see what you guys have to say. 907-433-3150. Let's go over here and we'll get started. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Michael. This is Carlene in Kodiak.
Well, good morning, darling Carlene. How are you this morning?
Excellent. And I'm so happy that you had a good weekend at your favorite room at Ocean Shores on the beach.
Yeah.
Nice news. Thank you. But what I'm calling about is the third item that Brad Keithley talked about today, adding $35 million to the budget for the legal system, attorney general, assistant attorney generals, prosecutors, and the legal staff. And I'm wondering, will they go back to 40 hours a week? Their hours were cut to like 4.5 days a week. The court system here locks up by noon on Friday, and I don't even know how many cases they take Friday morning. So they work like anywhere between 32 and 36 hours a week. So I'm wondering, will they go back to full-time work? Because that would make a difference in that wage increase. How it would is, do they get paid for not working, or will they work 40 hours a week?
Well, the state courthouses, that's all part of the judiciary, and I think that's separate than what we were talking about here. We're talking about the legal staff in the state government, the law department, and the staffers. They were the ones that received these wage increases. It wasn't the judiciary, which is the one that runs the courthouses and the systems. Now I know that they've been on short. They started back in 2020 with some shortening out things, and of course they closed the courthouses down for quite a while. Has this been going on for a while, Carlene, or is this something you just noticed?
No, since the shutdown.
Yeah. So
and go to the website alaska.gov and see how many attorneys work for the state of Alaska. About 10 years ago, down there, and there were like 150. So I don't know how many attorneys work there now.
I imagine if that was 10 years ago, I imagine it's probably more now. That's just, it's probably just the case right now. It's probably more. But this will probably not affect the hours at the courthouse. I know that they are overwhelmed. I know they still have a backlog from COVID. I read that here a couple weeks ago. They're still working on the backlog of cases from COVID. So this is not going to fix it, unfortunately, Carlene. I don't think this is going to fix that at all. They were trying to bring up some of the higher professional positions up to, commensurate with the public sector, with the private sector side. And I think that's what this was an attempt to do. Although, they also still get all the gold-plated benefits and everything else. So This is not going to fix your problem, though, Carlene, unfortunately.
When you compare it to the private sector, that's like a part-time job, when the rest of the economy works long, long hours, sometimes 7 days a week. So that's a primo job.
I mean, if I was working 38 hours a week, I would officially be working about half the time that I work now. So I would definitely love that. That would be like almost a vacation at this point for sure. All right, Carlene. Well, thank you for calling in this morning. I appreciate it. It's always good to hear from you. Let's go over here. We got another call. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Jeremy, Michael Dukes. I'm so sorry I missed you.
Oh,
over the weekend.
No,
I messaged you too late.
No problem, Jeremy. We'll get you squared away. We'll get you some coffee and t-shirts and everything else. We'll get it all squared away.
Yeah, it's all good, but it's good to hear Carlene, and if she's still listening, then I don't know if she's in my district or not, but we have a chance to get rid of Gary Stevens.
Right.
And I believe Sarah Vance is kind of hanging out with Heath Smith. And so I think that's who we're voting for in District 6. Is Heath Smith, right?
Yeah. No, Heath Smith, who's got a chance here, is going to be running against Gary Stevens in the ranked choice voting. He's obviously, they're going to make it through the primary. The primary, he's already decided that he's going to be on the November ballot because there's less than 4 people in it. So yeah, he's going to be down there. I think one of the most telling things for me when I was driving around in Homer on Saturday or Sunday, was that I saw a couple times like Gary Stevens and Louis Flora signs side by side. Louis Flora is the candidate who's running against Sarah Vance. And I just had to chuckle. That tells me more than anything.
By the Casilla post office, someone put up a sign said, vote for Snorky. Replace Lisa Murkowski, and then he pointed the arrow, so someone else put up a sign over there. Because I thought it was pretty flagrant, if I may use that word, flagrant.
Yeah.
For the Lisa Murkowski campaign to put up a sign that close to the post office, as if the post office is endorsing her, but if you talk to the actual employees of the post office, they're like, no, we do not, and that we got to figure out how to get rid of that Lisa Murkowski sign and put up Kelly Chewbacca's sign.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, I think there's a lot of pushback right now on Murkowski, and I saw that across the peninsula as well. A lot of Kelly signs out there. And I think this is a good time, Jeremy. I think this is a good time for everybody to make some of those changes. Changing the players out, obviously, number one on the charter of changes. That's what we need to be. That's what we need to be working on. Thank you for your call, Jeremy. I appreciate it, folks. We are up against the break. We're going to continue here in just a second. We're going to have Chris Story join us here. Phone lines are closed for the moment. We'll be back to more in just a moment. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Oh, hello. How are you? How's life treating you guys? How's everything going? Yeah, buddy. You ready to sorry, I'm just fixing something here. That it was bad. All right. Let me go back here. Oh, look at this. Randy was very nice. Randy says, I recommend the Michael Dukes Common Sense Core. It's where common sense ideas are discussed. It's at the Common Sense Core's private Facebook page where he first introduced his idea of the Hammond bond, which nobody is endorsing, but Randy has had some thoughtful discussions out there before, and I do appreciate that. So yeah, become a member of the Common Sense Core, baby. Become a member of the Common Sense Core. Oh man. Again, I had Jen, one of our newer members, came in and said, I heard about that for a long time, but I had no idea that it would help the show. Yes, it financially supports the show. That's how we got this new fancy Facebook, or excuse me, this new fancy broadcast software and everything else. That's where all that came from. All that stuff came from the donations and contributions of members of the Common Sense Core. So it's good. MD, how was your weekend? It was amazing. The problem with vacation is you can't make it permanent. I'd love to make it a permanent vacation, but I just can't. Where did you go? Oh, I'll tell you where I went. I went to Homer. That's my go-to place. You could figure that if I'm on vacation, I'm either at my house with the door shut and the curtains drawn and keeping everybody away from me, or I am down in Homer. That's what it goes down to. I am going down to Homer. Yeah, boy. State Senator Mike Shower will be live on Politidick at 1 p.m. today. Unfiltered. Hope to see you all there. All right, there you go. I can't wait to see what he has to say. Let's see here. Going back here through some of the comments. Doty, I've been here 31 years and never been to Homer. We'll get down there for sure. Have been so many places in our beautiful state, just not yet. You know what, Doty? Just change whatever plans you had to do something else in the state. Just change whatever plans you had and just make plans to go to Homer. Period. Full stop. End of story. Your life will change when you get down there into Homer. And there's some great places to go. Like I said, the Ocean Shores Resort is probably the best place in my opinion. I've stayed all over the place down there. That's probably the best place to go is the Ocean Shores, especially if you ask for a beachside room. If they've got them available, that's the ones you want, the beachside room, because they put you right down there. Literally a short walk across the grass and you're standing right on the bluff above the ocean. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right. Let me see here. I think we've got the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Story, on the phone with us right now. Let's see if we can bring him into the mix. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. Love the plug for Homer. Thank you.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's the one thing every time I go down there, I never want to leave. And if I could just plant my flag down there somewhere and work from there, that would be perfect. That would be perfect.
And what's most interesting is that it's the police that usually are encouraging you not to leave, at least not the vicinity for 48 hours.
Exactly.
I don't know what that's about.
I don't know why, but they just said, please, sir, don't leave town. And I'm like, but wait, I don't want to leave town. I've got to go.
We've got a room for you.
Exactly. All right. Well, hold the line, my friend. We're going to be right back here, and we're going to be continuing with Chris Story the man from Homer in just a hot second. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go. All right, welcome back to the program, Tuesday edition of the show. Tomorrow on the program, expecting to have Mike Shower and potentially Chris By, who is the Libertarian candidate for Congress, on board with us. Meanwhile, it is that time where we get a chance to get our uplift, our life coaching, our boost. It is the one, the only Chris Story, the man from Homer. I love HomerAlaska.com. Chris comes on board every week to share with us his stuff, his philosophy, and he is with us right now. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Michael Dukes, I'm on top of the world. How about you?
You know, there is no, there's just no better day than, well, unless of course I was down in Homer with you. I love HomerAlaska.com is his website. That's how much he loves his hometown. He made his website the hometown. So Chris, we had lunch the other day while I was down in Homer, and we didn't talk anything about the show. So I have no idea what you're going to talk about today, but I'm sure it's going to be fantastic, whatever it is.
Basically, I'd like to share with everybody how to get a free lunch. I'm kidding, but thank you for lunch. I enjoyed it, and it was very kind of you.
Yeah, it was a busy weekend. Chris and I ran around to like 3 different places trying to find a place to have breakfast, and we actually ended up having lunch instead. So it was a busy weekend in Homer with Salmon Fest and everything else. So I'm glad to see it got. I did eventually end up getting over to Captain's Coffee for some breakfast, Chris. We did. I'll let you know. We tried to go in there, and the place was standing room only. So. But I later on did go in there and get a chance to have some biscuits and gravy and eggs, and it was delicious. So, all right. So what are we gonna talk about? What is the topic for today? Sorry.
You know, I've been rereading a series of essays by Jim Rohn, and Jim is an incredible business philosopher, and he passed away in about 2009. And I just thought, now with the world the way it is, I thought this would be an excellent time to visit Jim Rohn's philosophy of life and business and capital. And so he wrote a series of essays called The World is Yours, and it's 26 collective essays. And this one I read this morning, I wanted to share with you, entitled 9 Things More Important Than Capital. Of course, by capital, he means money. So 9 things more important in your life than money. And I thought, man, this is the perfect thing to talk to Mr. Dukes about today.
I feel like I should be taking notes. Let me pop open a little note here because I want to know what the 9 things are. All right. So number 1, 9 things that are more important than money. Hit me with it.
Time. You've got time on your side, and you use your time wisely, and you invest your time. That's far more valuable than any amount of money. So investing your time wisely, getting the education while you're here, getting the free education that's all around you, using your time wisely and judiciously towards an aim, a very specific aim and goal that you've got set. If you use your time correctly and wisely, and you look at it as an investment, then it is far more valuable than all the money in the world.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I can't remember, it's something that I've heard for years. I don't know if my grandfather said it or something, but it's like time is the one thing. Well, time and property, those are the 2 things that they're not making more of. You know what I mean? You're not going to, you can't make any more time, and you can't make any more land. So those 2 things are kind of static, and you got to get them while you can.
And desperation is far more important than capital. Jim Rohn said, he said, I guess it's called must. Just put it in terms of just one word, must. When you must do something, you will. And so desperation will create far more opportunity in your life than somebody handing you $1 million. Imagine, bridges are burned. There's no turning back. You are desperate. You will do. You will accomplish. You can accomplish and probably do more than you thought you could ever possibly do or accomplish when you are desperate, backed against the wall. desperation will create opportunity.
Well, sometimes when you're desperate too, your mind makes leaps and reaches that you make connections and ideas that you would never have considered before if you weren't under such enormous pressure or desperate for so many things. You'd be like, why didn't I think of that before? Why didn't I think of this earlier? I mean, this would have been, your mind under that kind of pressure can work miracles.
In business, the last 28 years that I've been in business, it's been, as I thought about these, and I was reading this list this morning, and I was thinking, yeah, I remember being incredibly creative. I came up with some solutions to some business problems back in our pottery business that I still use some of those problem solving measures to this day in our real estate and our production and our properties businesses that I got from that moment in time when I was absolutely desperate back against the wall in a craft business. So
right.
Anyway, it's really served me well. And then that leads to determination. And basically it's just one step past desperation. Jim Rohn said that determination is when you're just past that desperation and you say, look, if I did it once, I can do it again and again, and I'm determined to win. And I know that I can earn more. I know I can become more. I am now determined. And determination, again, he said, is worth far more than money. And that leads to courage. In spite of falling, in spite of hurdles that are set before you, maybe even pitfalls and setbacks and obstacles, in spite of all those things, courage will carry you farther than a full bank account, because that can diminish and be depleted, but courage actually builds through desperation and determination and investing your time. You get and you earn courage, and you've got something you can spend for the rest of your life. And then that leads to ambition, because ambition is the progression of a worthy ideal, like you're headed towards a goal or a determined place. And ambition is what fuels that growth far beyond what a diminishing dollar could possibly return.
I like your analogy of the burning the bridges, because there are times in your lives where you're like, you're comfortable, you're easy. And sometimes you inadvertently burn the bridge, and sometimes in desperation, you burn the bridge. But that does definitely give you that determination. And I mean, it takes courage. Sometimes it takes courage to step out of your comfort zone, to do what you need to do, to break the ties that are binding you. You don't even see them, the invisible ties of habit force and other things. And then that's where your ambition has to take over. You have to want more. If you don't want more, if you're comfortable pumping gas or flipping burgers or, stamping letters or doing whatever it is that you're doing, then that's great. That's fine. But if you have reached through these and you've got to have that ambition to want more than what you have right now. And that could be more happiness. It could be more money. It could be more things. It could be more peace. It could be more of less. I don't know what it is, but it's all there.
I agree 100%. And that leads to faith. And faith is essentially the knowing that tomorrow will be better than today. It's belief in having been born on purpose and with a purpose. You're here on purpose. There's a reason. There's something for you yet to do. And even if you're maybe in the twilight years of your life, it doesn't matter. Faith is knowing that tomorrow will be better and that you are here on purpose, and this is your time. Now is your time, right now. And that is the essence of faith.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what's number 7?
Ingenuity, which is essentially creativity. And again, I mean, you can imagine that creativity is, would you rather have a bag of gold or creativity? Of course, you'd rather be a creative person, somebody who can use ingenuity and design and build and imagine something wonderful. Would you ever trade your imagination for $1 million, $2 million, $1 billion?
I don't know,
Absolutely
Chris.
not.
If I had a bag of gold, I could hire people who were pretty ingenious at that point.
If you lose ingenuity, you will be lost, and we'll find ways to get that money from you, Michael. I promise you.
No, that's true.
We will take it from you quickly.
That's true. That's true. I mean, that was the old Henry Ford thing when they accused him of being a dim-witted whatever, and he went to court for it. And he basically said, I've got all these buttons on my desk, and if I need something and I'm not smart enough to figure it out, I push a button and somebody pops out and tells me what I need to know. That's what I like to see. But you're right. You got to have an ingenuity.
That's really interesting because he took a newspaper to court for libel and said, because they did say he was ignorant, and he was trying to prove that he wasn't ignorant. And so they were, a whole panel of lawyers were asking him all kinds of complex questions. And you're right. That was in the final analysis. He said, wait a minute, why would I devote my memory to these things when I could push a button and ask any of the world's greatest experts in a heartbeat to come in and answer this question for me? That is ingenuity by definition.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
And then heart and soul, which is humanity. Investing your heart and soul into whatever it is that you're doing will make you attractive well beyond any sort of marketing campaign. The greatest marketing campaign or the multi-million-dollar Super Bowl ad can never replace the heart and soul of a company. If it's missing, the company will be going missing in the not too distant future. In your life, using your own humanity, being in touch with who you are is far more than the money you make. It's about who you become in the process. It isn't about the money.
Well, and we've seen that. I mean, we're always pictured the rich and the wealthy as the guys who are twirling. They're twirling their mustache. They don't have any humanity, blah, blah, blah. But many of the people that I've met who are multimillionaires, and I've met a lot of people who are multimillionaires who you'd look at them and go, I mean, the guy's wearing Carhartts and bunny boots, you know what I mean? And you're like, okay, but his humanity is there, or her humanity was there. They love people. They do those, they have a heart. You're not just there. Sure, there's people out there who are doing bad things to get wealthy or bad things to succeed or whatever, but it's never long lasting in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. You meet the most fantastically wealthy people in the world, and they're some of the most humane, not all, but some of the most humane people, or at least in touch with that je ne sais quoi, whatever it is, that X factor of humanity is just, they're riddled with it. I love that expression.
They're riddled with it.
Riddled with
it's like
it.
scurvy.
Well,
they're riddled with scurvy, and they're riddled with scurvy and humanity. That's
right, exactly. Riddled with it. And then finally, according to Jim Rohn, the ninth trait that is far more valuable than capital, personality, your charisma. A pleasing and genuine personality is worth, again, far more than any amount of money you could possibly be given or earn, because your personality will basically define your life and who you are, and you can move mountains. A personality, the right personality, charisma, and we've seen this on both, for good and for bad, personality can move a generation and literally move mountains.
Well, I had hope that I could accomplish this list right up to the last one, because dang.
Right, yeah.
Dang.
If only Michael Dukes had
any
any sort of personality.
Right. If I wasn't just like flat as a board, like dry and boring all the time, it would be. No, this is good stuff. Time, desperation, determination, courage, ambition, faith, ingenuity, humanity, and personality. The 9 traits, the things that are more important than money. And quite honestly, used in combination will lead you to whatever success you want, whether it is money or happiness or family or, posterity or popularity or whatever. It's all right there, broken down into these 9 things.
And every single one of these is available to every single one of us, and we can improve upon each one. We can invest our time better. We can use desperation, because to be frank, right now, if you don't feel a certain sense of desperation, and I'm not suggesting that any of us should be down or completely depressed, or not trying to be a gray cloud here in the morning, but I am suggesting if you're not feeling a little bit of desperation in the world, you might not be paying attention.
Right.
But use it and become determined and have courage and ambition and faith and ingenuity. Use your humanity and your heart and soul, and develop a personality beyond where we are today. And even you, Michael Dukes, of a great big personality, you still can improve upon each of these 9 traits, including your personality, because I got to tell you, I saw the tip you left the other day.
Yeah, and, I know. It's horrific, isn't it? It's interesting. Time to me is one of the more important things. Something I notice when I take a little time off, is especially when I'm able to leave town and just kind of shake everything off, is that my mind starts working on tracks that it normally doesn't, because you're so focused on work or whatever, and
Right.
you're so consumed. And I was inspired on my way down to Homer. I stopped at the Fred Meyer's or whatever there, and I bought a couple of composition books because I wanted to write some things down. I had ideas that were floating around in my head through that drive. I love to drive. I love window time. And it was making me think, and I was considering it, and that use of time. And then my wife and I were talking about various things that we could do, or things that, and she's like, but you're so busy and everything else. And I'm like, time is the only thing that I have control of. Maybe I watch an hour's less of TV a week or something and spend doing something like that, or maybe an hour less of whatever I'm wasting my time on, that I think of as downtime, but could create more time in the future, kind of thing. I just think it's so, that was really my whole thing this weekend, is that I came away with a lot of different ideas and concepts that I've been working on in the back of my mind for years, and a lot of them crystallized and gelled this week. And you're right. I think that is the most important. Number one definitely is time, and everything else just kind of falls in, behind that.
Yeah, I love that. And it truly is an investment. And you said wasted, but it's an investment. Even if you're investing, if you look at it that way, I mean, you can invest in a high returning dividend paying stock or real estate, or you could invest in something that will be rusted and gone in a year. So
Right.
It is an investment either way. And if you look at it like that and you think, wait a minute, this is how the wealthy, this is how the Ray Dalios of the world, this is how the Warren Buffetts of the world think about everything as an investment, including their time. I was just watching an interview with Warren Buffett's daughter the other day, and she said that her dad, she can remember from just when she was just a little kid, her dad was constantly reading. However, he always made time to be at the dinner table throughout her entire childhood.
Right.
He invested that time. But if he was reading, you could interrupt him. It wasn't a problem, but the reading was an investment of time in the study of what's happening in the world, what has happened in the past, and what might happen into the future. So it's all related to time, but everything grows from there, and we have an opportunity to improve upon all 9 of these things we just discussed.
Chris Story, the man from Homer, author of the book Born to Live, also The Making of Man and The Backyard Millionaire, got his new Backyard Millionaire podcast going, which you can find, I'm sure, links of at ilovehomeralaska.com. Final thoughts, Chris, as we let you go.
I'm just so thrilled to hear what you said about your trip away from your routine and what you discovered, and it was all right there with you. But sometimes it is really nice to just get away, even just for a few days, and rediscover what's been sort of maybe dormant inside or just waiting for you. So Congratulations, and thanks for having me back on.
Well, it's always good to talk with you, my friend, and thanks for being a help in my life. I appreciate that. Look forward to talking to you again next week.
Okay.
All right, folks, we're out of time. We got more coming up. We're going to open lines again in the next segment. The Michael Dukes Show, Common Sense Radio.
Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. I didn't ask Chris what he thought about all the stuff that you guys are asking about here. Let's see. Somebody asked him, what does he think about Gary Stevens? Somebody asked, what does he think about the Trump's home being raided by the FBI? Yeah, I mean... Oh man, what a hot mess. That's for sure. All right. Jimmy says, depends on the size of the bag. When Chris said, would you like a bag of gold or would you like ingenuity? It depends on the size of the bag. Like I said, if I had a big enough bag of gold, I could buy me some ingenuity. That's what I'm saying. All right. Going back. Tawny said, I spoke with Chris by very intriguing discussion. I think we're going to have Chris on. I've got to confirm with him, but I think we're going to try and have him on tomorrow on the program. And then we'll follow it up with Mike Shower in hour 2. Again, Politidic, Mike Shower is going to be on Politidic today at 1 p.m. unfiltered. So make sure you stop in. Make sure you stop in over there on Facebook today at 1 p.m. and you can do that there as well. I'm still going through here. I still Daniel says, I'm pretty sure that some weirdo mentioned investing time into your fitness a few weeks back. That's true. It's true. And how much time has I invested in my fitness in the last week and a half? About an hour. About an hour. Yeah, I know. It was one of the things that I was thinking about this weekend. Because time is, okay, so this is not a complaint. All right. I don't want to I'm not complaining, but I'm just giving you guys a little insight into what my life is like, right? My morning starts at 4 a.m. essentially. And then I do the show, and then I start work on my various other things, voice acting, working in my agency, and then of course I run 2 radio stations in Anchorage. And so my day ends when I pull back up in the driveway, usually about 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night. That's my day. And then I come in and take care of whatever I need before I have dinner. And then I usually get to bed by about 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Right. So that's my day. And so sometimes it feels like it's really hard to carve out an extra hour to do something like go for a walk or a run or work out or whatever. But it's something I got to do. I mean, it's not like it's going to slow down. I will say that the last 5 days really gave me a chance to think about what I want and how I want to change things. So, I did some walking this weekend. I walked on the beach. I walked around, I walked on the bluff up and down, took some trails, did some things like that. 1 hour, 3 to 4 days a week, says Daniel, pay the sweat dragon. Okay. That's called the sweat tax. So, no, you're right. I mean, I need to do it. There's no doubt about it. Paying that will pay off dividends in the long run. And it's like Chris was saying. Time is the one thing we don't have actually I was saying it. Time is not something we have any more of. So I like it. I like it for sure. Okay. People should invest in the Hammond bond. He's going on and on about that. I'm scrolling backwards here. Robbie says she likes Hyder better than Homer. I don't know how that is. Of course, I've never been to Hyder, so I guess I don't really have a comparative. State Senator Mike Shower will be talking about the Constitutional Convention on the 20th of August at 11 at the Real Life Church on Palmer, Wasilla Road. This is a go-to event, says Terry. So we'll see if we can get more information on that. Scrolling here, see. I wish the government would remove the PFD from them using any of that money to fund the government and giving it to the people as it was designed for. Don't we all, Chris? Don't we all wish that they use the money for the PFD for what it was designed for? That's it right there. Too many touchy-feely people in Homer, said Jeremy. There are a few there, yeah. And Steve says, who was the philosopher that Chris was? Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn. He was a business speaker and, kind of a business guy, philosopher. 12 minutes a day of exercise will make an hour a week. Well, I need a little bit more than 12 minutes, but I'm with you, Sandy. All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Okay, you ready? Well, I suppose we should pull back the shades here and drop the phone lines open again to see what you guys have to say. At 907-433-3150. Pivotel call-in line. Phone lines are open right now. If you'd like to sound off, we got folks out on Facebook right now hanging out with us, and YouTube and Twitch. Got all kinds of folks being part of the show today. Feel free to come on out and join us in the chat rooms at any of those locations, and don't forget to like and subscribe. That way, you can always be part of the show. No matter what, you'll get notifications when we go live and everything else. It's so good. It's so good. All right. Chris has made me thoughtful again. He has a tendency to do that. Chris is one of my good friends, and we were eating lunch on Friday, I guess it was Friday. We were eating lunch. And, I'm very grateful for him for bringing this perspective to the show and talking about different things. Going back to his 9 things that are more important than capital: money, time, desperation, determination, courage, ambition, faith, ingenuity, humanity, and personality. All of those are important for sure. But time is one that, as I get older, I realize maybe it's because that I'm, you're approaching the end. And of course, I'm a long ways away from the end. But as you get older, especially when you pass that 50 mark, you start to realize that things are going faster and faster. I remember when I was a kid as a teenager, how the summers used to feel like they lasted forever, right? I mean, you were a kid, you didn't have a job, you were, you were out of school. And that 10, 12, 13 weeks of summertime just seemed to last forever. And these days, it's like 2 months goes by in a blink, and it is, you're just like, you're there. I mean, the summer's over. Here we are, August the 9th today, and it feels like fall for many of us out there. I heard again it was snow in Fairbanks this morning. Somebody said it snowed up there in Fairbanks and parts of Fairbanks. But we've got to take that time, and we've got to use it wisely. And if there's anything that I came away with from this weekend in my period of self-reflection, and I had a big, deep period of self-reflection, there's no doubt about it, that I need to start using my time a little more wisely in and making my off time or my spare time a little more productive than I have been. And so of all the 9 things that were more important than money, that's the one that stuck out to me today more than anything else. So I don't know what you got out of it. Maybe you can tell me what you got out of Chris's. I always get something out of it. Sometimes it's not what he intended, but it's something that I came away with that I felt pretty good about. So feel free to dial us up at 907-433-3150. This hour of the program being brought to you by our friends at Satellite West. You can find out more about them at satellitewest.com. Over to the phones we go. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Michael. This is Cindy calling from Sterling.
Hello, Cindy from Sterling. What's on your mind?
Hey, I'm just calling to follow up on the lady from Kodiak that talked about the state's hours and such.
Right.
And while I'm a former state employee, I was not a lousy one. I was an excellent one, but
Well,
I
they're not all lousy, Cindy.
Really
we got to say that. First of all, not all state employees are lousy or lazy, right? Yeah, no.
One thing that's been really refreshing talking to Charlie Pierce is he's listening to people. And I gave him several examples of various ways that the state can look at being more efficient. And and I was a manager, but not in a leadership of the state position.
Right.
And it's interesting because it's a different feel I have communicating with him than communicating with some of the other candidates and stuff. And I guess, if you go on the state's website today and you look at what positions are open, one of the most critical positions that are open in the state are child protection officers, or they're called protective service specialists.
Right.
And those are the positions that go out and they investigate babies, child in need of aid cases, neglect, abuse. They follow through with the family, try to reunite them. There's just a mirage of things, and the turnover rate in that position is upwards to 70%, I think. And it's because the system's flunked. It's a bad system, and you can't pay people enough to do that day in and day out.
Right.
And granted, the benefits are wonderful, but and so I think as we go into this election season and all that sort of stuff and Charlie is the only person that returned my calls about child protection. And it is a critical problem in the state. There's 3,000 kids in state custody in the state of Alaska.
Right.
If you go on the state of Alaska's website and you see that, those are children out of their homes for one reason or another. It's neglect, abuse, or they're in foster care. And that's the other thing is we don't have enough foster parents. And they're the unsung heroes of the state because they do take in these children. But I just want to
Charlie,
to realize
Charlie's
that these
listening.
are questions that should be answered.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Charlie is listening, and I'm glad to hear that, Cindy. Thank you for calling in. I'm sorry, I got one more call here I think I can get to before I run out of time. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning. This is Terry calling from Wasilla.
Good morning, Terry. Quickly.
This is off the rails, but last night I went to a fundraiser for McCabe Shower. All of the people that were there were 60 plus years old. Somehow we've got to get our younger people involved and interested in our elections. And I don't know how to do it, but hopefully other people can come up with some ideas. So just throwing that out there, we got to get the younger ones involved.
I agree, Terry. It's one of the reasons why I do things like Facebook and everything else now, trying to attract some of those younger people into it. It's important. You're right. An aging demographic. We can't keep at it. Folks, we're out of time. We got to go. Tomorrow's another day. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. We'll see you. Terry, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that is it's a critical thing, and it's something that we need to work on. But it's showing more and more that many of the millennials and the younger generations, the iGen or whatever you want to call them, they're disenfranchised by what they're seeing in the news. They're frustrated, and they don't even want to participate in a lot of ways, which is frustrating for me. But you're right. You're right. 100%. It's something we need to do. All right. Well, thank you for coming on board, my friends. We will see you tomorrow. I hope you have a great day. I know you're going to have a great day. Live well, be kind, love one another. We'll see you then.
We've had our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.